It was a chilly Saturday night. The air felt cold on my face, but I didn't care. I just wanted to sit in my backyard and relax by my awesome fire pit. The flames were dancing, crackling and popping like tiny fireworks. The stars twinkled up in the big, dark sky, and everything felt so calm and perfect. I could smell the wood burning, and it made me smile. My name's Jake, by the way. Hi. I'm just a regular guy, not super fancy or anything. I moved into this quiet little neighborhood a few months ago, hoping for some peace and fun. And that night, with my fire pit going, it felt like I finally had it. But here's the thing, not everyone was happy about my fire pit. Nope. There was one person who hated it more than anything. Her name was Karen. She lived right next door to me, in a house with perfect grass and windows so clean they sparkled. Karen was the kind of lady who watched everything. She had sharp eyes, like a hawk flying high, looking for something to swoop down on. If there was a tiny weed in your yard, boom, she'd see it from a mile away. And trust me, she'd complain about it too. Loudly. She'd march over, point her finger, and tell you exactly what you did wrong. That was just how Karen was. Now, I'm not the kind of guy who likes trouble. I like to keep things easy and chill. When I moved here, I thought, hey, this place looks nice. Quiet streets, friendly people, perfect for me. I got a little house with a big backyard, just right for hanging out. I'd wave at the neighbors, say hi, and try to fit in. Most folks waved back. Some even smiled. But Karen? Oh no. She didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just stared. Every time I walked outside, I'd feel her eyes on me, like she was waiting for me to mess up. And when I lit that fire pit for the first time, that's when the real fun began. It wasn't a big fire pit. Just a small one, round and made of metal, with a little pile of wood inside. I'd seen other people in the neighborhood use them, so I figured it was fine. I mean, who doesn't love a warm fire on a cold night? I grabbed some logs from the store, stacked them up, and struck a match. The flames started small, then grew, licking the wood and sending little sparks into the air. I pulled up a chair, sat down, and let out a big, happy sigh. This is it, I thought. This is my happy place. But Karen didn't think so. Nope. Not even close. That first night I used the fire pit, I saw her peek out her window. Her curtains twitched, and there she was, those sharp eyes glaring at me. I waved, trying to be nice. Hey, Karen. Just warming up out here. I called. She didn't wave back. She didn't say a word. She just disappeared behind the curtain, and I thought, okay, maybe she's just shy. Ha! I was so wrong. The next day, she knocked on my door. Boom, boom, boom. Loud and fast, like she was mad already. I opened it, and there she stood, arms crossed, lips tight, looking like she'd just bitten a sour lemon. Jake, she said, her voice all sharp and pointy, that fire pit of yours is a problem. I blinked. A problem? It's just a little fire, Karen. Keeps me warm. She shook her head, like I'd said something silly. It's dangerous, she snapped. The smoke, the sparks, it's against the rules. I'm watching you, Jake. Don't think I'm not. I didn't know what to say. Rules? What rules? I'd never heard of any rules about fire pits. But Karen acted like she was the boss of everything. She turned around, marched back to her house, and slammed her door. I stood there, scratching my head, thinking, wow, she really doesn't like me. And that was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Karen kept watching me. Every time I went outside, there she was peeking from her porch or staring through her window. If I mowed my lawn, she'd frown. If I put out trash cans, she'd huff. And if I dared to light my fire pit? Oh boy, that's when she got loud. Jake, she'd yell across the fence. Put that out? It's bothering me. I'd laugh a little and say, it's fine, Karen. Relax. But she never relaxed. Not once. Now, here's where it gets interesting. See, Karen thought she knew everything about me. She thought I was just some new guy, some nobody who didn't belong in her perfect little neighborhood. She'd boss me around, complain about my fire pit, and act like she was in charge of the whole street. But what Karen didn't know, I wasn't just some random newbie. Nope. I had a secret. A big, juicy secret up my sleeve. And it was about to flip her world upside down like a pancake hitting the ceiling. But SHH. I'm not telling you what it is yet. We've got to wait a little longer for that. First, let's see how this crazy night with the fire pit started. That Saturday, I decided I'd had enough of the cold. I wanted my fire pit again. I grabbed some logs, set them up, and lit the match. The flames popped up, bright and warm, and I plopped into my chair with a big grin. The neighborhood was quiet. Kids were inside, dogs weren't barking, it was just me, the fire, and the stars. I leaned back, closed my eyes, and thought, this is perfect. Nothing can ruin this. And then I heard it. A door slamming. Loud. I opened my eyes, and there was Karen, stomping out of her house like a bull charging at a red flag. She had her phone in one hand and a flashlight in the other, shining it right at me. Jake, she shouted, her voice cutting through the night. That fire pit is illegal. I'm done warning you. I sat up, blinking at the light in my face. Karen, it's just a fire. Chill out, I said. But she didn't chill. She held up her phone and started dialing. I'm calling 911, she said, her eyes narrow and mean. You're in big trouble now. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Calling 911 over a fire pit? That sounded nuts. Go ahead, I said, shrugging. It's not a big deal. But Karen wasn't joking. She pressed that phone to her ear and started talking fast. Yes, hello, police. My neighbor's got an illegal fire going. It's dangerous. Send someone quick. I just shook my head and poked at my fire with a stick. Let her call, I thought. Nothing's going to happen. But here's the thing, something did happen. Something big. See, Karen thought she was so smart, calling the cops on me. She thought she'd win, that I'd be scared or shut down my fire pit and say sorry. But she didn't know what I knew. She didn't know my secret. And that secret? It was about to make this night way more exciting than she ever expected. What was my secret? Well, I'll give you a tiny hint. It had to do with why I moved here in the first place. I wasn't just some guy looking for a quiet life. Nope. I had a job to do, a sneaky little mission. And Karen? She was part of it, even if she didn't know it yet. But don't worry, I won't spill it all now. We've got a whole story ahead of us, and I promise it's going to get wild. So stick with me, okay? Let's see what happened next when those sirens started screaming down the street. Karen stormed out of her house that night like she owned the whole street. She didn't just walk, she marched, her feet stomping hard on the ground. Her face was red, her eyes were narrow, and she looked mad. Really mad. Jake, she yelled, her voice loud enough to wake up the whole neighborhood. That fire pit is a hazard. She pointed her bony finger right at me, like I was a bad kid caught sneaking cookies. I'm calling 911 right now. You're breaking every rule in the HOA handbook. I was sitting by my fire pit, the little flames crackling in front of me. The night was cold, and the fire felt nice and warm. I didn't want any trouble. So I just smiled and waved at her. It's all good, Karen, I said, trying to keep things calm. It's just a small fire. Nothing to worry about. But Karen? Oh no, she wasn't having it. Not even a little bit. She shook her head so fast I thought it might fall off. Then she whipped out her phone from her pocket, fast as lightning. She punched in those 3 numbers 9-1-1 and held it up to her ear. Yes, hello, she screeched into the phone. My neighbor's got a fire going. It's dangerous. There's smoke and sparks everywhere. You need to send someone quick. I watched her, poking my fire with a stick. The flames danced a little, sending tiny sparks up into the dark sky. I wasn't scared. Nope. I just sat there, letting her yell. She paced back and forth on her porch, her flashlight swinging around, shining in my eyes every few seconds. He's breaking the rules, she kept saying into the phone. The HOA handbook. Karen thought she was the queen of this neighborhood, always bossing people around, writing nasty notes about unmowed lawns or loud dogs. She'd glare at me every chance she got, like I was some troublemaker who didn't belong. But I stayed cool. I let her rant. Why? Because I knew something she didn't. Something big. Karen loved being in charge. She acted like she owned every house, every yard, every blade of grass on our street. If your lawn wasn't cut just right, you'd find a note taped to your door the next day. Mow your grass, it would say, in her big, angry handwriting. If your dog barked too loud, she'd bang on your door and tell you to keep that mutt quiet. She even told old Mr. Jenkins across the street that his bird feeder was too messy and had to go. Everyone just nodded and did what she said, because nobody wanted to deal with her yelling. Me. I wasn't like that. I didn't care about her rules. I'd moved here a few months ago, and I just wanted to live my life. I liked my little house, my big backyard, and my fire pit. That's it. But Karen didn't like me from the start. The first day I moved in, she came over with a sour face and said, "You better keep this place neat, Jake. I don't like messes." I just grinned and said, "Sure thing, Karen." She didn't like that grin. Not one bit. Ever since then, she'd watch me like a hawk. If I left my trash can out too long, she'd huff and puff. If I played music on my porch, she'd stomp over and say, "Turn that noise off." And my fire pit? Oh man, that was her favorite thing to hate. Every time I lit it, she'd pop up like a jack-in-the-box, shouting about smoke or sparks or some rule I'd never even heard of. "It's in the HOA handbook," she'd say, waving her arms. I'd just shrug and keep roasting my marshmallows. What handbook? I never got one. That night, though, she took it to a whole new level. Calling 911? Over a fire pit? It was nuts. But that's Karen for you, always making a big deal out of nothing. She stood there on her porch, phone in hand, yelling at the poor person on the other end. "He's got flames shooting up," she said. They weren't. The smoke's choking me. It wasn't. "He's a danger to the whole street." I wasn't. I could hear her from my chair, and I just shook my head. She was like a cartoon character, all loud and silly. But here's the fun part: I didn't care. Not one bit. I leaned back in my chair, watching the fire pop and crackle. Karen could yell all she wanted. She could call the cops, the fire department, the president. I wasn't worried. Why? Because I had a secret. A big, sneaky secret that she didn't know about. And it was going to make her look so foolish, she wouldn't know what hit her. See, Karen thought she had me figured out. She thought I was just some new guy, some troublemaker who didn't fit in her perfect little world. She'd glare at me like I was dirt on her shoe, like I didn't belong here. Every time I walked outside, those sharp eyes of hers would lock onto me. If I waved, she'd frown. If I said hi, she'd grunt. She'd mutter stuff under her breath, two things like trouble or messy or who does he think he is. I heard her once when she didn't think I was listening. It made me laugh. But I didn't fight back. Nope. I stayed cool. When she yelled about my fire pit, I'd just say, "Okay, Karen," and keep doing my thing. When she left those nasty notes on my door, "Put that fire out," I'd toss them in the trash and light it again the next night. I wasn't scared of her. I wasn't mad. I was waiting. Waiting for the right moment. Because my secret? It was like a surprise present, all wrapped up and ready to open. And when it did, Karen was going to wish she'd never messed with me. That night, as she ranted into her phone, I could feel it coming. The air felt buzzy, like something big was about to happen. Karen didn't notice. She was too busy squawking about rules and hazards. She pointed that bony finger at me again, her flashlight bouncing around. "You're done, Jake," she shouted. "The police are coming, and they'll shut you down." I just waved again, nice and slow, like I didn't have a care in the world. "Sure, Karen," I said. "Whatever you say." She smirked, thinking she'd won. Her eyes glinted in the dark, all proud and mean. She probably pictured me getting hauled off in handcuffs, my fire pit kicked over, her standing there like some big hero. That's how Karen was. She loved being the boss, loved making people feel small. She'd been doing it to everyone on the street for years, and nobody stopped her. Not the guy with the loud dog. Not the lady with the messy garden. Nobody. They all just let her run the show. But me? I wasn't like them. I wasn't here to follow her rules or bow down to her glares. I had my own plan, and it was better than anything she could dream up. Karen thought she was the queen, but she didn't know the real game. She didn't know who I was not really. And that's what made this so fun. Every time she yelled, every time she pointed that finger, she was digging herself a bigger hole. And I was just sitting there, smiling, letting her do it. The tension was thick that night. You could feel it like the air before a storm. Karen's voice bounced off the houses, loud and sharp. My fire kept burning, steady and bright. Neighbors started peeking out their windows, little shadows behind curtains, watching the show. They probably thought I was in trouble, too. Poor Jake, they might have said. Karen's got him now. But they didn't know either. Nobody did. Not yet. I poked my fire again, sending a few sparks up into the sky. Karen saw it and gasped, like I'd just set her house on fire. See, she screamed into the phone. He's doing it again. Hurry. I chuckled. She was so dramatic, it was almost funny. Almost. But deep down, I wasn't just laughing. I was ready. Ready for what was coming next. Because my secret? It wasn't just some little thing. It was huge. And when it came out, Karen's whole world was going to flip upside down. What was it? Oh, I can't tell you yet. That's part of the fun. But I'll give you a tiny hint, it had to do with why I was here, in this neighborhood, in this house right next to hers. I wasn't just some random guy with a fire pit. Nope. I had a job. A sneaky, clever job. And Karen? She was about to find out she'd picked the wrong neighbor to mess with. So there she was, yelling and pacing, thinking she'd won. And there I was, sitting by my fire, cool as could be. The night was dark, the stars were out, and the stage was set. Something big was coming, something Karen couldn't stop. And I couldn't wait to see her face when it hit. The next few minutes were crazy. Karen was still on her porch, yelling into her phone like a wild animal. Yes, officer, he's got a fire going, she shouted. It's dangerous. Hurry up. Her voice bounced all over the quiet street, loud and sharp. I just sat there by my fire pit, roasting a marshmallow on a stick. The little flames popped and danced, and I acted like nothing was wrong. I even hummed a little song to myself, nice and calm. But inside? Oh, I was counting the seconds. Something big was about to happen, and I couldn't wait. See, I'd been watching Karen for weeks. Not in a creepy way, like sneaking around with binoculars or anything. No, no. I just paid attention. Ever since I moved in, she'd been bossing me around, complaining about my fire pit, my grass, my everything. But I noticed stuff about her, too. Little things. Like how she'd get sneaky phone calls late at night. Or how she'd stuff big envelopes into her mailbox when she thought no one was looking. I kept my eyes open, and I wrote it all down in a notebook I hid in my garage. Why? Because I had a secret job, a super sneaky one, and Karen was part of it, even if she didn't know it yet. That night, as she kept yelling, I stayed quiet. I didn't argue. I didn't yell back. I just watched her, like a cat watching a mouse. She didn't know it, but every word she said, every stomp of her foot, was bringing her closer to a big surprise. A surprise she wouldn't like one bit. My marshmallow turned golden brown, and I popped it into my mouth. Yum. Sweet and gooey. I smiled at Karen while I chewed. She didn't smile back. Nope. She glared harder, like she wanted to zap me with laser eyes. Put that fire out, Jake, she screamed, waving her flashlight at me. The light bounced around, hitting my face, then the grass, then back to me. I mean it. The police are coming, and you're in trouble. I shrugged, nice and slow. Okay, Karen, I said, all chill. Do what you gotta do. That made her madder. Her face got redder, like a tomato about to burst. She stomped her foot so hard I thought her porch might crack. You think this is a joke? She yelled. You'll see. You'll be sorry. I didn't say anything back. I just poked my fire with my stick, sending a few tiny sparks up into the air. Karen gasped, like I'd just thrown a bomb at her house. "See that?" she screeched into her phone. "He's making it worse. Hurry." I chuckled a little. She was so loud, so dramatic, it was almost funny. Almost. But I wasn't just laughing inside, I was waiting. Waiting for the right moment. Because every second that ticked by was bringing us closer to the big twist. Then I heard it. Sirens. Far away at first, just a little whine in the distance. But they got louder fast. Wee-oh-oh, wee-oh-oh. The sound cut through the night, bouncing off the houses. Karen heard it too. She stopped pacing and smirked at me, all proud and mean. "Here they come, Jake," she said, pointing that bony finger again. "The cops are here. You're done for." Her eyes glinted in the dark, like she'd just won a big prize. She crossed her arms and stood there, waiting for me to panic. But I didn't panic. Nope. I leaned back in my chair, took another marshmallow, and stuck it on my stick. The sirens got closer, wee-oh-oh, and I just kept roasting. Slow and steady. Karen stared at me, her mouth open a little. "What's wrong with you?" she snapped. "Don't you hear that? They're coming for you." I looked up at her, gave her a big grin, and said, "Sure, Karen. We'll see." That made her huff, loud and annoyed. She didn't get why I wasn't scared. She didn't get it at all. The truth? Those sirens weren't slowing down at my house. Nope. They zoomed right past my yard and screeched to a stop in front of her driveway. Tires squealed, lights flashed red and blue, spinning all over the place. Karen's smirk dropped. Her eyes got wide, like two big marbles. She turned her head slow, real slow, and saw the police car parked right in front of her perfect little house. Not mine. Hers. I stood up then, brushing marshmallow goo off my hands. I stretched my arms, nice and casual, like I was just waking up from a nap. The fire pit crackled behind me, warm and happy. Two cops jumped out of the car, big guys with serious faces. One had a flashlight, the other had a notebook. They didn't even look at me. Nope. They walked straight toward Karen's porch, their boots thumping on the ground. Karen blinked fast, like she couldn't believe it. Wait, she said, holding up her hands. "Officers. You've got the wrong house. He's the one with the fire." She pointed at me again, her finger shaking a little this time. The tall cop with the flashlight turned to her. "Are you Karen Thompson?" he asked, his voice deep and no nonsense. Karen froze. Yes," she said, all quiet now. "Why?" That's when I stepped closer, just a little, so I could hear everything. I still had that grin on my face, big and bright. The cop with the notebook flipped a page and said, "Ma'am, we're not here about a fire. We're here about something else." Karen's face went pale, like all the color drained out of it. What?" she stammered. "What are you talking about?" I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. See, I'd been watching Karen for weeks, like I said. All those sneaky phone calls. All those big envelopes. I'd figured out what she was up to. And I'd made a call of my own, a quiet one, earlier that day. Not to 911, oh no. To someone else. Someone who'd been waiting for the right time to catch Karen in her own game. She didn't know it yet, but she'd been stealing. Yep, stealing. Money from the HOA, the group that takes care of our neighborhood. Dues, they call it. Every month, we all pay a little to keep the streets nice and the parks clean. But Karen? She'd been taking some of that money and hiding it for herself. Thousands of dollars. I found out because I'm not just Jake, the guy with the fire pit. I'm Jake, the secret helper hired by the HOA board to watch her. That's my big secret. Well, part of it. For weeks, I'd been sneaking around, collecting clues. I'd see her slip cash into her purse when she thought no one was looking. I'd hear her whisper on the phone about moving the money. I even found some papers she dropped once, receipts that didn't add up. I took pictures, wrote notes, and kept it all safe in my garage. Then, that morning, I'd called the HOA boss and said, "I've got proof. Can you send the cops tonight?" They said yes. And now, here we were. Karen didn't know any of this. Nope. She thought I was just some annoying guy with a fire pit. She thought she was the smart one, calling 911 on me. But every time she bossed me around, every time she yelled, she was making it easier for me to catch her. And now, with those cops standing on her porch, she was starting to realize something was very, very wrong. "What do you mean?" she asked the cops, her voice all shaky now. "I called you. He's the problem." She pointed at me again, but the tall cop just shook his head. "Ma'am," he said, "we got a different call. About you." Karen's mouth opened, then closed, like a fish out of water. She looked at me, then at the cops, then back at me. "Jake," she said, all confused. "What's going on?" I didn't answer. Not yet. I just leaned against my fence, watching her squirm. The fire pit popped behind me, sending a little spark into the air. The cop stepped closer to her, and I could see her hands start to shake. She was scared now. Real scared. And she should be. Because all those weeks of me being quiet, all those times I let her rant, were leading up to this. She didn't know it, but I'd been building a trap, a big one. And she just tripped right into it. The neighbors were watching now, too. Curtains twitched, heads poked out of windows. They'd heard Karen's yelling, heard the sirens, and now they saw the cops at her house, not mine. Whispers started floating through the night. "What's happening?" someone said. "Is Karen in trouble?" another voice asked. I didn't say anything. I just waited. The fun was just getting started. Karen's eyes darted around, like she was looking for a way out. "This is a mistake," she said, louder now. "I didn't do anything. He's the one breaking rules." The cop with the notebook pulled out a paper and held it up. "Ma'am," he said, "we've got a warrant. For your arrest." Karen's jaw dropped. "A warrant?" she squeaked. "For what?" That's when I knew it was almost time. Time for the big reveal. Not yet, though not quite. I had to let it build a little more, let her sweat a little longer. Because every second she stood there, confused and scared, was making this sweeter. She'd bossed me around for weeks. She'd glared and yelled and acted like she was the queen. But now she was about to fall off her throne. The cops didn't answer her right away. They just stepped closer, their faces serious. Karen backed up a little, bumping into her own door. "This is crazy," she said. "Jake, tell them. Tell them I didn't do anything." I tilted my head, still grinning. "Oh, Karen," I said, real slow. "I think they know exactly what you did." Her eyes got huge. She stared at me, then at the cops, then back at me. "What?" she whispered. "What are you talking about?" I didn't answer. Not yet. I just crossed my arms and watched as the cops pulled out handcuffs. Shiny, silver handcuffs that glinted in the flashing lights. Karen saw them and gasped. "No," she said. "No, no, no. This isn't right." But it was right. Oh, it was so right. All those weeks of watching, all those little clues, were adding up now. She didn't know it, but I'd seen everything. And soon, very soon, she'd find out who I really was. Not just Jake, the guy with the fire pit. But Jake, the one who'd been waiting for this moment all along. The sirens had stopped, but the lights kept spinning red, blue, red, blue. The night was alive with noise and color, and Karen was right in the middle of it. She didn't look like a queen anymore. She looked small, scared, and totally lost. And me? I just stood there, cool as ever, letting it all unfold. Because this was just the start. The real fun was coming next. The night was buzzing now. The police car sat in Karen's driveway, its red and blue lights flashing all over the place. They spun across her house, my fence, and the dark street, making everything look wild and alive. Two cops hopped out of the car, fast and loud. Their boots hit the ground with big thumps. One was tall, with a flashlight swinging in his hand. The other was shorter, holding a notebook tight. They looked serious, like they meant business. Karen saw them and waved her arms, all excited and smug. She still had her phone in one hand, like she was the boss of the whole show. "Officers," she shouted, her voice loud and sharp. "Arrest this guy. He's got an illegal fire pit." She pointed her bony finger at me again, like she always did, thinking she'd won. Her lips curled into a mean little smile, and her eyes glinted in the dark. She was so sure the cops were there for me. So sure she'd finally beat me. But here's the funny thing, they didn't even glance my way. Nope. Not a peek. The tall cop with the flashlight turned his head slow and looked right at her. His face was hard, like a stone, and he didn't smile. "Ma'am," he said, his voice deep and steady, "are you Karen Thompson?" Karen blinked, fast and confused. Her smug smile wobbled a little. Yes," she said, all quiet now. "Why?" That's when I stood up from my chair by the fire pit. The flames were still crackling behind me, warm and happy. I brushed sticky marshmallow goo off my hands, plop, plop onto the grass. I stretched my arms, nice and slow, like I didn't have a care in the world. Then I took a big step forward, right into the glow of the police lights. "Hey, officers," I said, loud and clear so everyone could hear. "Thanks for coming so fast. I'm the one who called you earlier about the stolen HOA funds." Karen's jaw dropped. Literally. Her mouth fell open so wide I could see her teeth, and her eyes got huge, like two big balloons. She stared at me, then at the cops, then back at me. What?" she squeaked, her voice all shaky and small. The cops didn't wait for her to figure it out. The tall one stepped closer to her, his flashlight shining right in her face. The shorter one pulled something shiny out of his pocket handcuffs. They glinted in the light, silver and cold. "Ma'am," the tall cop said, "we've got a warrant for your arrest. Embezzlement, fraud, you've been busy." Karen's whole body froze. She didn't move, didn't blink, didn't even breathe for a second. The word arrest hung in the air like a big, heavy cloud. Her flashlight dropped from her hand, clunk, and rolled across her porch. Her phone slipped next, hitting the ground with a little thud. She looked like a statue, stuck there in the spinning red and blue lights. "No," she finally yelled, her voice cracking. "No, no, no. This is a mistake. He's the one you want." She pointed at me again, her hand shaking like a leaf in the wind. But the cops didn't listen. The tall one grabbed her arm, not hard, but firm, and turned her around. The shorter one started putting those handcuffs on her wrists, click, click. Karen twisted her head back, staring at me with wild eyes. "Jake," she shouted. Tell them this is wrong." I just grinned, big and bright, and leaned against my fence. "Oh, Karen," I said, real slow. "It's not wrong. It's very, very right." She gasped, loud and dramatic. "What are you talking about?" she screeched. Her voice was so high it sounded like a whistle. The neighbors were watching now, heads popping out of windows, shadows moving behind curtains. Everyone wanted to see what was happening. And me? I was ready to spill the beans. The big, juicy truth I'd been hiding all this time. "See, here's the thing I forgot to mention earlier. Oh yeah, it's a good one. I'm not just Jake, the new neighbor with the fire pit. Nope. I'm Jake, the undercover investigator. That's right. The HOA board, the people who run our neighborhood, hired me months ago. They had a problem. A big one. Money was disappearing. Cash that we all pay to keep the streets nice and the parks clean, poof, gone. Thousands of dollars. And they didn't know who was taking it. So they called me. "Jake," they said, "we need someone sneaky. Someone smart. Can you move in and find our thief?" I said, "You bet I can." And that's why I was here, living right next door to Karen. Guess who'd been dipping into that neighborhood cash for months? Yep, Karen. She thought she was so clever, sneaking around, taking a little here, a little there. But I caught her. Oh, I caught her good. For weeks, I'd been watching her like a hawk. I saw her stuff envelopes with money and hide them. I heard her whisper on the phone about moving the cash. I even found papers she dropped once, proof she was stealing. I took pictures, wrote it all down, and kept it safe in my garage. Every glare she gave me, every yell about my fire pit, just made me dig harder. And tonight? Tonight was the night it all came crashing down on her. Karen didn't know any of this. Not a clue. She thought I was just some annoying guy who moved in and wouldn't follow her rules. She'd storm over, boss me around, and act like she was the queen of the street. Put that fire out, Jake, she'd say. Mow your lawn, Jake, she'd snap. I'd just smile and nod, letting her think she was winning. But really? I was building a trap. A big, sneaky trap. And she walked right into it. The cops started reading her rights, you know, that stuff they say on TV. You have the right to remain silent, the tall one said, his voice calm and steady. Karen didn't stay silent, though. Oh no. She twisted and pulled, trying to get free. This is crazy, she yelled. I didn't steal anything. He's lying. She pointed at me with her cuffed hands, her face all red and sweaty now. He's the one you should arrest. He's got that fire pit. The shorter cop looked at her, then at me. He raised an eyebrow. Fire pit, he said. I shrugged, all casual. Yeah, it's just a little one, I said. Keeps me warm. No big deal. The cop nodded, like he didn't care. We're not here about a fire, he said to Karen. We're here about the money. Lots of money. And your name's all over it? Karen's eyes got even bigger if that was possible. Money, she squeaked. What money? I don't know what you're talking about. But her voice was wobbly now, not so loud and sure. She was scared. Really scared. And she should be. Because I had proof, tons of it. Pictures, papers, notes all locked up in my garage, ready to show the world what she'd done. I stepped closer, just a little, so she could see me better in the flashing lights. Karen, I said, all calm and cool, you've been taking HOA dues. Thousands of dollars. You thought no one would notice, huh? Her head snapped up, and she stared at me like I'd just grown two heads. What? She shouted. That's a lie. I'd never do that. But the cops didn't buy it. The tall one pulled out a paper, a warrant, all official and fancy. We've got evidence, he said. Bank records. Receipts. Your signature. Karen's knees wobbled. She leaned against her door, looking like she might fall over. No, she whispered. No, no, no. But it was too late. The trap was sprung. The game was over. And I'd won. The neighbors were buzzing now. I could hear them talking, little voices floating out from their houses. Karen's getting arrested, someone said. For stealing, another voice asked. No way, a kid yelled. Curtains twitched all up and down the street, and a few brave folks even stepped onto their porches to watch. Mr. Jenkins, the old guy with the bird feeder, peeked out his door and shook his head. I knew she was trouble, he muttered. Karen heard it too. She spun around, her cuffed hands swinging. Shut up, she yelled at the neighbors. This is all a mistake. Jake's the bad guy here. But nobody listened. They just stared, whispering to each other. Her perfect little kingdom, the one where she bossed everyone around, was falling apart. And I was the one who'd knocked it down. The tall cop grabbed her arm again, gentle but firm. Let's go, ma'am, he said. Time to head to the station. Karen pulled back, her feet sliding on the porch. No, she shouted. You can't do this. I'm innocent. But the shorter cop shook his head. Tell it to the judge, he said. They started walking her toward the car, one on each side, holding her steady. That's when I decided to give her one last little surprise. Hey, Karen, I called out, loud and cheerful. She turned her head, her eyes burning with anger. What? She snapped. I grinned even bigger. Did you really think my fire pit was the problem? I said. Or were you just mad because I was getting too close to your secret? Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She just stared, her face a mix of shock and fury. The cops opened the car door creak, and guided her inside. She fought a little, twisting her shoulders, but they were too strong. This isn't over, Jake, she yelled as they pushed her down into the seat. I'll get you for this. I waved, nice and slow. Sure, Karen, I said. Good luck with that. The door slammed shut, bam, and the cops climbed in the front. The engine roared to life, and the car started rolling down the driveway. Karen's face pressed against the window, glaring at me through the glass. Her eyes were like fire, hot and mean, but she couldn't do anything now. The red and blue lights spun one last time across my yard, then the car turned onto the street and sped away. Wee-oh-oh, wee-oh-oh. The sirens faded into the night, taking Karen with them. I stood there, watching it go. The fire pit popped behind me, sending a spark up into the sky. The air was quiet now, no more yelling, no more drama. Just me, the stars, and the warm glow of my little fire. I grabbed another marshmallow, stuck it on my stick, and sat back down. The neighbors were still whispering, but I didn't care. Let them talk. They'd figure it all out soon enough. See, I'd been planning this for weeks. Months, even. The HOA board called me way back, before I even moved in. Jake, they said, we've got a thief. Someone's taking our money, and we think it's Karen Thompson. Can you catch her? I said yes right away. I love a good challenge. So I packed my bags, moved in next door, and got to work. I acted normal, waved at people, mowed my lawn, lit my fire pit. But all the while, I was watching her. Every sneaky move, every little lie, I saw it all. Karen made it easy, really. She was so loud, so bossy, she didn't think anyone would dare check on her. She'd leave notes, yell at me, glare like I was the worst guy ever. But every time she did, I got closer to the truth. I found bank papers in her trash once. Oops, Karen, you dropped something. I heard her on the phone, talking about extra cash when she thought I was asleep. I even saw her sneak out one night with a big bag, looking all shifty. Bit by bit, I built my case. And tonight, with the cops showing up, it all came together. The fire pit? That was just a bonus. I knew it bugged her. Oh, it bugged her so much. She'd yell about smoke, sparks, rules, whatever. I kept lighting it anyway, partly because I like marshmallows, but mostly because it kept her distracted. While she was busy hating my fire, I was busy catching her. Sneaky, right? Now she was gone, off to the police station to face the music. Embezzlement, fraud, big words for a big crime. She'd been stealing from all of us, me, Mr. Jenkins, the lady with the loud dog, everyone. Thousands of dollars, tucked away in her sneaky little pockets. But not anymore. I'd stopped her. Me, Jake, the quiet guy with the fire pit. The guy she thought was just a troublemaker. I leaned back in my chair, roasting my marshmallow slow and steady. The flames turned it golden, and I popped it in my mouth. Sweet and warm, just how I like it. The night was calm again, the stars twinkling above. Karen's house sat dark and empty next door, no more yelling, no more glares. Just peace. But the best part? The look on her face when she realized I wasn't just some random neighbor. That moment when she saw the handcuffs, heard the word arrest, and knew I'd beaten her at her own game. Priceless. Absolutely priceless. The cops would take it from here. They had my proof, all those pictures and papers I'd given them earlier. Karen would have to explain herself, but I didn't think she'd wiggle out of this one. Not with all the evidence I'd found. She was done. Finished. And me? I was just getting started, at least when it came to enjoying my fire pit in peace. I tossed another log on the fire, crackle, pop, and watched the flames grow. The neighborhood was mine now, in a way. No more bossy Karen to ruin the fun. I'd done my job, caught the thief, and made things right. And all it took was a little patience, a little sneaking, and one very annoying fire pit. Karen was a mess. She stood there in her driveway, hands cuffed behind her back, yelling like a broken sprinkler. "This is outrageous," she shouted, her voice all high and squeaky. "You can't prove anything. Let me go." Water sputtered out of sprinklers when they broke, and that's what she sounded like, spit and noise, going everywhere. But the cops? They didn't care. Nope. They weren't buying her story at all. The tall cop with the flashlight just shook his head, and the shorter one with the notebook tightened the handcuffs. Click, click. "Time to go, ma'am," the tall one said, calm as could be. Karen didn't go quiet. Oh no. She twisted and pulled, her feet kicking at the air. "No," she screamed. "This is a mistake. I'm innocent." Her yells bounced down the street, loud and wild, like a dog barking at the moon. The neighbors heard it, everyone did. Curtains twitched, and faces pressed against windows, watching her get hauled off. The cops held her arms tight and walked her to the police car. She kept shouting, even as they opened the door creak, and pushed her inside. "Jake," she hollered, glaring at me through the spinning red and blue lights. "You'll pay for this." I didn't say anything back. Nope. I just stood there by my fire pit, the flames popping and crackling behind me. I grabbed another log from the pile next to my chair and tossed it on whoosh, watching the fire grow bigger. The warm glow lit up my face, and I gave her a little wave, nice and slow. "Bye, Karen," I said, all chill. The police car door slammed shut, bam, and the engine roared. Tires squealed as it peeled out of her driveway, kicking up little bits of dirt. The sirens started again, wee-oh-oh, and off they went, down the street, into the night. Karen's yells got quieter and quieter until they were gone, swallowed up by the dark. I sat back down in my chair, grinning big. The fire felt good, warm on my hands and face. The stars twinkled up above, and the neighborhood was quiet now. No more screaming, no more drama. Just peace. Sweet, sweet peace. I grabbed a marshmallow from the bag on the ground, stuck it on my stick, and held it over the flames. It turned golden slow, and I popped it in my mouth. Yum. The night was mine now, and Karen? She was gone. Off to the police station, where she'd have to face what she'd done. The next day, the whole neighborhood buzzed like a beehive. It was Sunday morning, sunny and bright, and people were out walking dogs, riding bikes, talking over fences. But they weren't just talking about the weather or their yards. Nope. They were talking about Karen. And me. Word spread fast, like butter on hot toast. Everyone knew what happened the night before, how the cops showed up, how Karen got dragged away, how I was the one who called it in. It was big news, the biggest thing to hit our little street in forever. People who'd ignored me before, folks who'd barely waved or said hi, started stopping by my house. First, it was Mr. Jenkins, the old guy from across the street. He shuffled over with his cane, his white hair messy from the wind. "Jake," he said, squinting at me through his thick glasses, "is it true? Karen's a thief?" I nodded, leaning on my porch railing. "Yep," I said. "She was stealing HOA money." "Lots of it?" His eyes got wide. "Well, I'll be darned," he muttered. "I knew she was bossy, but a crook? Wow." He shook his head, then patted my shoulder. "Thanks, kid. You did good." Next came Mrs. Lopez, the lady with the loud dog. She walked over with a plate of cookies, chocolate chip, still warm from the oven. "Jake," she said, smiling big. "I heard you caught Karen. Is that right?" I took a cookie and nodded. "Yeah," I said, munching. "She was taking our dues, thousands of dollars." Mrs. Lopez gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Thousands? That's awful. We been paying extra, and she just kept it?" I shrugged. "Pretty much. But I found the receipts. She's busted now." Mrs. Lopez shook her head, then pushed the plate at me. "You're a hero, Jake. Take these. You earned 'em." All day, it kept going like that. People I'd never talked to stopped by, some with questions, some with smiles, some just to say thanks. The guy with the messy garden waved from his yard. "Good job, Jake," he called. The mom with the two little kids rode by on her bike and yelled, "You rock." Even the quiet teenager who never looked up from his phone gave me a thumbs up. It was wild. I'd been the new guy, the one Karen picked on, the one nobody really noticed. Now, I was the guy who saved the day. Turns out, Karen had been overcharging dues for months, maybe even years. See, every month, we all pay a little money to the HOA. It's supposed to fix the roads, clean the park, stuff like that. But Karen? She was in charge of collecting it, and she'd been sneaky. She'd tell us we owed more like $50 instead of 30 and then keep the extra for herself. Thousands of dollars gone, poof, into her sneaky pockets. Nobody knew because she acted so big and bossy, like she'd never do anything wrong. But I figured it out. I dug up the receipts papers that showed what we really owed and saw the truth. She was a thief, plain and simple. I'd been watching her for weeks, ever since I moved in. The HOA board hired me to be their secret helper and undercover investigator. Jake, they said, we think someone's stealing. Can you find out who? I said yes, packed my stuff, and moved right next door to Karen. I acted normal, lit my fire pit, mowed my lawn, waved at folks. But all the while, I was sneaking around, collecting clues. I saw her hide cash in envelopes. I heard her whisper about money on the phone. I found papers she dropped, proof she was lying. Bit by bit, I built my case. And last night, when the cops came, I gave them everything: pictures, notes, receipts. They had all they needed to bust her. By Monday, the HOA board sent me a letter. It came in a big white envelope, dropped right in my mailbox. I opened it on my porch, the sun shining down. Dear Jake, it said in neat black letters. You're a hero. You caught Karen and saved our money. Thank you. Fires permitted anytime. I laughed out loud when I read that last part. Sweet, right? No more rules about my fire pit. I could roast marshmallows whenever I wanted, and nobody, not even Karen, could stop me. The letter came with a little check, to a thank you bonus for my work. Not a ton of money, but enough to buy more logs and maybe a new chair for my backyard. I tucked it in my pocket and grinned. This was better than I'd hoped. Not only did I catch the bad guy, but I got to keep my fire pit, too. Perfect. The neighborhood changed after that. Fast. People weren't scared of Karen anymore. No more nasty notes, no more yelling over fences. They started talking to each other, smiling, waving. Mr. Jenkins put his bird feeder back up, and nobody complained. Mrs. Lopez's dog barked all it wanted, and she just laughed. The guy with the messy garden let it grow wild, full of flowers and weeds, and it looked kind of cool. It was like the street woke up, free from Karen's mean little kingdom. A few days later, I heard more news. A guy from the HOA board stopped by Mr. Carter, a short man with a big mustache. He knocked on my door, tap, tap, and I let him in. Jake, he said, sitting on my couch, Karen's in big trouble. She's at the police station, and they're charging her with stealing. Embezzlement, they call it. Fraud, too. I nodded, sipping a glass of water. Good, I said. She deserves it? Mr. Carter smiled. She does. And thanks to you, we're getting the money back. Well, most of it. Most of it? I asked, tilting my head. He sighed. Yeah. She spent some fancy purses, a new car, stuff like that. But the rest? We'll use it to fix the park. New swings, maybe a slide. What do you think? I grinned. Sounds awesome. Kids LL love it. He clapped his hands. Great. And Jake? You're welcome at our meetings anytime. You're one of us now. I like that. One of us. I'd moved here as the new guy, the quiet guy, the one Karen hated. Now I was part of the neighborhood, really part of it. People didn't just wave, they stopped to chat. They brought me cookies, said hi, asked how I was. It felt good. Real good. That night, I lit my fire pit again. The sky was clear, full of stars, and the air was cool. I stacked the logs high, crackle, pop, and watched the flames dance. No more Karen to yell at me. No more glares from next door. Just me, my fire, and a bag of marshmallows. I roasted one, then another, letting the sweet smell fill the air. The neighbors didn't mind. Some even waved from their yards, smiling at the glow. I leaned back in my chair, thinking about it all. Karen was gone off to face the cops, the judge, maybe even jail. She'd been so loud, so mean, bossing everyone around like she owned the place. But she didn't own it. Not anymore. Justice was served, big time. She'd have to pay back what she stole, and she'd never boss us around again. Me. I'd done my job. I'd caught the thief, saved the day, and got my fire pit back. Not a bad deal. The fire popped again, sending a spark up high. I watched it float, then disappear into the dark. The neighborhood was quiet, happy, free. And me? I was just Jake, the guy who made it happen. The guy who turned a bossy thief into a big lesson. And the guy who could roast marshmallows anytime he wanted. Sweet, right? So, here's the thing, Friends, sometimes the loudest person in the neighborhood is hiding the dirtiest secrets. Yep, it's true. Think about it. Karen was loud, super loud. She yelled at me about my fire pit, bossed everyone around, and acted like she was the queen of the whole street. She'd stomp over, point her finger, and tell us what to do. Put that fire out, Jake, she'd shout. Mow your lawn, she'd snap. Keep that dog quiet, she'd say to Mrs. Lopez. She was always talking, always complaining, always making noise. And everyone just listened because she was so loud, so big, so in charge. But guess what? All that noise was hiding something sneaky. Something bad. Karen wasn't just bossy, she was a thief. She took money from the HOA, money that was supposed to fix our park and clean our streets. Thousands of dollars, poof, gone into her sneaky little pockets. She'd smile and wave like everything was fine, but behind that loud voice, she was hiding a big, dirty secret. She thought nobody would notice. She thought she was too smart, too loud, too important to get caught. But she was wrong. Oh, she was so wrong. And then there's me, the quiet guy with the fire pit. Hi, I'm Jake. I didn't yell back at Karen. I didn't stomp my feet or point my finger. Nope. I just sat there, roasting my marshmallows, smiling and waving. Okay, Karen, I'd say, all calm and cool. People didn't notice me much at first. I was the new guy, the one who moved in with a little house and a big backyard. Nobody thought I was special. Nobody thought I was doing anything big. I was quiet, super quiet. But here's the fun part, that quiet guy with the fire pit. He might just be the one to light up the truth. See, I wasn't loud, but I was sneaky in my own way. I watched Karen. I listened. I saw her hide stuff, heard her whisper on the phone, found papers she dropped. I didn't make a fuss, I just kept my eyes open. And bit by bit, I figured out what she was up to. I was like a detective, but the kind who doesn't wear a fancy hat or carry a magnifying glass. I was just Jake, sitting by my fire, putting the pieces together. And when the time was right, bam, I lit up the truth, bright as my fire pit flames. The cops came, Karen got caught, and everyone saw what she'd been hiding all along. That's the cool thing about life, friends. Sometimes the loud people, the ones who talk big and act tough, are trying to cover something up. They shout and point and boss you around because they don't want you to look too close. They're like a magician waving a wand in one hand while they hide a rabbit in the other. Look over here, they say, so you don't see what's really going on. Karen was like that. Her loud voice was her wand, and her secret stealing was the rabbit. She waved it around for months, maybe years, thinking she'd fool us all. But quiet people? They can be sneaky too, in a good way. They watch. They think. They wait. They don't need to yell or boss anyone around. They just do their thing, like me with my fire pit, and when the moment comes, they shine. I didn't need to be loud to catch Karen. I didn't need to fight her or argue. I just stayed calm, kept my secret, and let the truth come out when it was ready. And when it did, wow, it was big. Bigger than Karen's yells, bigger than her mean glares, bigger than anything she could have imagined. So, next time someone tries to boss you around, maybe ask yourself, what are they hiding? Seriously, think about it. If someone's always telling you what to do, always acting like they're the best, maybe they're not as perfect as they seem. Maybe they're scared you'll find out something they don't want you to know. Like Karen. She bossed me around because she didn't want me digging into her secrets. She thought I was just a guy with a fire pit, some new kid who didn't matter. But I did matter. I saw through her noise, and I found the truth. You can do that too, friends. You don't have to be loud to be strong. You don't have to yell to be smart. Sometimes the best way to figure things out is to stay quiet, watch, and listen. Be curious. Ask questions in your head. Wonder why people act the way they do. If someone's being mean or bossy, don't just nod and go along, think about it. What's behind all that noise? What don't they want you to see? You might be surprised what you find. I learned that from this whole crazy adventure. Karen was loud, but her loudness didn't win. My quietness did. I moved into this neighborhood not knowing anyone, just a guy with a fire pit and a secret job. The HOA board said, "Jake, We need help. Someone's stealing. Can you catch them? I said yes, packed my bags, and got to work. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing, not the neighbors, not Karen, nobody. I just watched and waited, letting her think I was nobody special. And when the time came, I showed everyone who I really was, the guy who stopped the thief. That's what makes this story fun. It's not about being the loudest or the bossiest. It's about being smart, being sneaky in a good way, and finding the truth. Karen thought she had power because she could yell and glare and write nasty notes. But real power? It's in the quiet stuff, the watching, the thinking, the waiting. That's what I had. That's what caught her. And that's what made the neighborhood better. Now, everything's different. Karen's gone off with the cops, facing her big mess. The street's happy again. People wave, smile, talk to each other. Mr. Jenkins has his bird feeder back. Mrs. Lopez's dog barks all at once. The guy with the messy garden lets it grow wild and pretty. And me? I've got my fire pit, my marshmallows, and a letter from the HOA saying I'm a hero. Fires permitted anytime, they wrote. Sweet, right? I can sit out there every night if I want, roasting and relaxing, no bossy Karen to stop me. But it's more than just that. It's about what I learned and what you can learn, too. Life's full of loud people and quiet people, big secrets and little truths. Don't be afraid of the loud ones. Don't think they're always right just because they talk a lot. And don't think the quiet ones are weak. Sometimes the quiet ones like me are the ones who change everything. They're the ones who see what's really going on, who wait for the perfect moment, who light up the truth when nobody expects it. So stay curious, friends. Keep your eyes open. If someone's bossing you around at school, at home, anywhere, don't just shrug and take it. Wonder why. Ask yourself what they're hiding. Maybe they're not hiding anything big like Karen was, but maybe they are. You won't know unless you look. Be the quiet one who watches, who thinks, who figures it out. You don't need to yell to be awesome. You just need to be you, smart, sneaky, and ready to shine when the time's right. This whole wild story taught me that. I moved in, caught a thief, and made my neighborhood happy, all while roasting marshmallows by my fire pit. It was crazy, it was fun, and it was worth it. Karen's loud days are over, and my quiet victory is just beginning. I've got more logs to burn, more marshmallows to eat, and a street full of friends who say thanks every day. That's pretty cool, huh? And guess what? This isn't the end. Nope. There's always more out there, more secrets, more stories, more adventures. Maybe next time it'll be a different neighbor, a different mystery, a different fire pit fight. Who knows? But I'll be here, ready to tell you all about it. So stick with me, friends. Keep watching, keep wondering, keep being curious. The world's full of loud Karens and quiet Jakes, and you never know who's hiding what. I'll see you in the next wild story. Bring your marshmallows, and let's light up the truth together. So, here's the thing, friends, sometimes the loudest person in the neighborhood is hiding the dirtiest secrets. Yep, it's true. Think about Karen. She was loud, really loud. She yelled at me all the time about my fire pit. Jake, put that out, she'd shout, pointing her bony finger. She'd stomp over to my yard, her face all red, telling me I was breaking rules. She didn't just yell at me, though. Nope. She bossed everyone around. She'd tell Mr. Jenkins his bird feeder was messy. She'd tell Mrs. Lopez her dog was too noisy. She'd leave nasty notes on doors if your grass wasn't cut just right. Karen was like a big, loud storm, blowing through our street, making everyone listen. But guess what? All that yelling, all that bossing, was hiding something sneaky. Karen had secrets, big, dirty ones. She was stealing money from the HOA. That's the group that takes care of our neighborhood, fixes the roads, cleans the park, stuff like that. We all pay a little bit every month, called dues. But Karen? She was in charge of collecting it, and she took extra thousands of dollars. She'd hide it in her pockets, thinking nobody would notice. She acted so loud and important, like she'd never do anything wrong. But she did. Oh, she did. And her loud voice? It was like a trick to keep us from looking too close. Now, let's talk about me, the quiet guy with the fire pit. Hi, I'm Jake. I wasn't loud like Karen. I didn't yell back when she bossed me around. Nope. I just sat by my fire pit, roasting marshmallows, smiling and waving. Okay, Karen, I'd say, all calm and cool. People didn't notice me much at first. I was the new guy moved in a few months ago with my little house and big backyard. Nobody thought I was doing anything special. I was quiet, super quiet, just watching the flames crackle and pop. But here's the cool part, that quiet guy with the fire pit? He might just be the one to light up the truth. See, I had a secret too, not a bad one like Karen's, but a good one. I wasn't just a regular neighbor. I was an undercover investigator. The HOA board hired me to catch their thief. Jake, they said, money's disappearing. Can you find out who's taking it? I said, sure. So I moved in next door to Karen and got to work. I didn't tell anyone, not the neighbors, not her, nobody. I acted normal, lit my fire pit, mowed my lawn, waved at people. But all the while, I was watching her. I saw her sneak cash into envelopes. I heard her whisper about money on the phone. I found papers she dropped, proof she was stealing. I kept it all quiet, locked in my garage, until the right moment came. That moment? It was wild. Karen called the cops on me, thinking my fire pit was illegal. She stood on her porch, yelling into her phone, so sure she'd win. But the cops didn't come for me, they came for her. I'd called them earlier about the stolen money, and when they showed up, bam, her secret was out. They put handcuffs on her, hauled her off, and her loud voice couldn't save her. My quiet watching, my sneaky clues, lit up the truth brighter than my fire pit ever could. And just like that, the loudest person lost, and the quiet guy won. So here's what I learned, friends, loud doesn't mean right. Nope. Sometimes the people who talk the most, who boss you around the hardest, are hiding something. Karen's noise was like a big mask, she wore it so we wouldn't see her stealing. She thought being loud made her strong, made her smart, made her safe. But it didn't. It just made her easier to catch. All that yelling didn't stop me, it helped me. Every time she bossed me around, I got closer to figuring her out. Her loudness was her weakness, not her power. And quiet? Quiet can be strong too, super strong. I didn't need to yell to beat Karen. I didn't need to fight or argue. I just watched, waited, and worked. I was like a ninja, sneaky and smart, moving slow until it was time to strike. Being quiet let me see things she didn't want me to see. It let me hear things she didn't want me to hear. It let me find the truth she tried to hide. And when I did, I didn't shout it out, I just showed it, calm and clear, and let the cops take care of the rest. Next time someone tries to boss you around, maybe ask yourself, what are they hiding? For real, think about it. If someone's always telling you what to do, always acting big and tough, maybe they're not so perfect. Maybe they're scared you'll find something out. Like Karen. She bossed me around because she didn't want me digging into her secrets. She thought I was just some guy with a fire pit, some new kid who didn't matter. But I mattered a lot. I saw through her noise, found her trick, and stopped her cold. You can do that too, friends. You don't have to be loud to be awesome. You don't have to shout to be smart. Sometimes the best thing is to stay quiet, watch, and wonder. Be curious. Ask questions in your head. If someone's being mean or bossy at school, at home, anywhere, don't just nod and listen. Think about why. What's behind it? Are they hiding something? Maybe it's not as big as Karen stealing, but maybe it is. You won't know unless you look. I learned that from this crazy story. Karen was the loudest person I'd ever met, but her loudness didn't win. My quietness did. I moved in, caught a thief, and made my neighborhood happy, all while roasting marshmallows. It wasn't about being the biggest or the loudest, it was about being sneaky in a good way, being smart, being patient. Karen thought she had power because she could yell and glare. But real power? It's in the quiet stuff, the watching, the thinking, the waiting. That's what I had. That's what beat her. Now everything's better. Karen's gone off with the cops, facing her big trouble. The neighborhood's happy again. People wave, smile, talk to each other. Mr. Jenkins has his bird feeder up. Mrs. Lopez's dog barks all at once. The guy with the messy garden lets it grow wild and cool. And me? I've got my fire pit, my marshmallows, and a letter from the HOA saying, "Jake, you're a hero. Fire's permitted anytime." That's the best part, no more rules about my fire. I can sit out there every night, roasting and relaxing, and nobody stops me. But it's more than just that, friends. It's about what the story means for me, for you, for everyone. Loud people like Karen? They're not always what they seem. They might act big, but they could be hiding something small and sneaky. And quiet people like me? We're not weak, we're strong in our own way. We see things, hear things, find things. We don't need to yell to make a difference. We just need to be curious, be smart, and be ready. So stay curious, friends. Keep your eyes open. If someone's bossing you around, don't be afraid to wonder why. Maybe they're hiding something like a secret, a trick, a lie. You don't have to fight them with noise. You can beat them with quiet, like I did. Watch, listen, think. Be the one who sees the truth when nobody else does. You might not have a fire pit or a secret job like me, but you've got your own power, your brain, your eyes, your heart. This adventure was wild, huh? I moved in, lit my fire, and caught a thief, all while staying cool and quiet. Karen's loud days are done, and my quiet victory is here to stay. I've got more marshmallows to roast, more nights by the fire, and a street full of friends who say thanks. That's pretty awesome. But the best part? Knowing you can do it too. You can be the quiet hero, the sneaky truth finder, the one who lights it all up. So I'll see you in the next wild story, friends. Stick with me, there's always more to tell. More secrets, more fun, more adventures. Bring your curiosity, bring your marshmallows, and let's find the truth together. Who knows what's out there? Maybe another loud Karen, maybe another quiet Jake. Let's find out, stay curious, and I'll see you soon.